Prototyping plays a crucial role in human-computer interaction, with paper and low-fidelity prototyping often praised for their advantages in early-stage design. Our work investigates this assumption, offering insights into why digital and high-fidelity prototyping may actually be, to our surprise, the preferred prototyping approaches by UX/UI designers in the software industry today. My name is Jonathan Chen. My co-author is Dr. Dongwook Yoon. We're from the University of British Columbia. Let's dive in. In the UX/UI design process, prototypes serve as a blueprint for the final output, allowing designers to explore, communicate, and validate design assumptions so that designs can be refined before development. There are a wide range of prototypes used in the UX/UI design space, and they can be characterized in terms of their medium and fidelity. From a medium perspective, prototyping tools range from physical prototypes, such as paper prototypes, to more sophisticated digital prototyping tools such as Figma. Paper prototypes allow users to interact with a visually crude paper version of a user interface being manipulated by a person playing computer. HCI literature has traditionally advocated for paper prototypes in early-stage design for their simplicity, cost-effectiveness, and ability to stimulate creativity. Even today, paper prototyping is valued as an important topic in HCI, receiving high importance ratings and being included as a core component of HCI curriculum. However, the advent and evolution of digital prototyping tools such as Figma and SIGCHI now enable designers to more easily and quickly build interactive prototypes that closely resemble the final product. These digital prototyping tools now rival the simplicity and speed advantages that paper prototyping is frequently cited as having, challenging the relevance of paper prototyping in contemporary software industry contexts. This calls for an updated account of what role exactly physical prototypes play in UX/UI designers' workflows today. In addition to medium, prototypes in the UX/UI space can also be characterized in terms of fidelity. Prototype fidelity can be evaluated on a spectrum from low to high by determining visual, interaction, and functional resemblance to the final product. Lower fidelity prototypes include sketching, whiteboarding, wireframing, and paper prototyping. They enable designers to externalize design ideas quickly at a low cost and allow user study participants to focus on core functionality and the design concept when providing feedback. Higher fidelity prototypes, on the other hand, have typically been employed for detailed design evaluations, marketing, and user testing prior to deployment. However, empirical studies comparing the quality of feedback garnered by low and high fidelity prototypes generally haven't found significant differences. This, coupled with the vast improvements we've seen in digital prototyping tools since the publication of those empirical studies decades ago, prompts the need for a reevaluation of the comparative advantages between different prototype fidelities. And so our net takeaway here is that, number one, we have a lot of dated studies that don't accurately portray industry prototyping practices today. And number two, there are contrasting viewpoints about the effectiveness of different prototypes from a fidelity and a medium perspective. And so our thinking is that if we can get an updated view of how designers use prototypes in practice and the reasoning behind their prototyping decisions, then we can get insight into how to develop strategies and build better tools that help design practitioners prototype more effectively and efficiently. And so this raises the question, what are the factors that influence prototyping practices in the contemporary UX/UI design landscape, and how? To answer our research question, we recruited 10 design practitioners and HCI educators through purposive and snowball sampling to partake in semi-structured interviews in which we probed deeper into each designer's professional experience, their educational background, and understand how different prototyping approaches fit into their current design process. The interview transcript data was analyzed using reflexive thematic analysis. So in our findings, we discovered that UX/UI designers, firstly, seem to have less affinity towards paper and other physical media for prototyping. And number two, they find diminishing value in always starting with low-fidelity prototypes. We unearthed several key factors explaining these prototyping practices, and these factors can be grouped into three themes. The first is industry norms, which includes the proliferation of hybrid work and the prioritization of corporate over design needs. The second is technological advancements in digital prototyping tools. And the third is changes in designers' identities, which include professional maturity and educational and generational changes. I'd now like to go into more detail on the first two of those themes. So the first theme is industry norms. With hybrid work environments becoming more common, the inability of physical prototypes to adapt have made them a less popular choice among designers compared to their digital counterparts. So one of our participants, Jolene, recalled a hybrid discovery session in which some designers were in office with physical whiteboards, while others were working from home participating via a conference call and using the online digital whiteboarding software, Miro. She said that people in the room would just engage in their own conversation, and then sometimes they would forget about the remote team and sometimes start writing things on the physical whiteboard. And so this turned out to be a really frustrating collaboration experience for Julian. And so for her, video conferencing and digital prototyping tools are the better option in hybrid workspaces because they allow designers to collaborate effectively regardless of their whereabouts. Now, another core characteristic of collaboration in hybrid workspaces is asynchronous work, because hours tend to be a bit more flexible than when working in person. Asynchronous collaboration isn't practically feasible with physical prototypes, but digital tools such as Figma allow prototypes to be easily shared, and stakeholders can start asynchronous comment threads, annotate designs, and tag other people to action on tasks. Now, a second factor that falls under the industry norms umbrella is that corporate stakeholders struggle to understand the lack of visual refinement in low-fidelity prototypes. Firstly, corporate stakeholders typically don't have a design background, and they're often unfamiliar with the design process, so it can be challenging for designers to communicate and solicit feedback from them using low-fidelity prototypes. Stakeholders may struggle to understand the visual abstractions in low-fidelity prototypes and become overly fixated on visual appearance, hindering them from providing feedback on overall design concept and flows. Now, a counter argument could be made that designers can technically still create low-fidelity prototypes for initial exploration, and then eventually transition to visually higher fidelity prototypes when they're ready to communicate their designs to stakeholders. However, an important contextual backdrop in industry is that there is a very strong cultural bias towards results that prioritizes shipping and iterating fast. And so these heavy time constraints really leave designers struggling to undergo the full prototyping cycle from low to high fidelity. And one of our design participants, Celeste, really captures both of these elements that underlie corporate work environments in a quote that she shared. First, that non-design stakeholders struggle to understand low-fidelity prototypes and grasp the intrinsic value of the design process. She said, "We were working in a startup, so it was very fast-paced. No one was interested in what I had to do lo-fi. Everyone was just like, okay, well, show it to me in a more finished version so I can critique on it." And secondly, there's the aspect of time pressure that we talked about, of working in a results-oriented environment and how that makes it challenging for designers to even do low-fidelity work for exploratory purposes. And so Celeste continued, there's that task of needing to translate what you're doing in your design sprint, and almost a need to justify each day that you take up in a design sprint. And it's harder to do that with lo-fi work because people are getting antsy and being like, oh, okay, well, we just need to settle on a direction and just move forward with it so that we can have something a little more refined. Now, the second theme I want to touch on is technological advancements. In particular, we found that building prototypes in the physical medium has become inconvenient because design tools have evolved such that there are all-in-one digital prototyping tools like Figma, centralizing design workflows to the digital medium. So all the participants that we interviewed named Figma as the de facto prototyping software for designers. It has comprehensive features to help designers brainstorm, wireframe, mock-up, build interactions, and hand-off designs. The breadth of functionality reduces the number of overall tools that designers need to use and simplifies their design process to stay within a single tool in the digital medium. One of our participants, Surya, said that design used to be a very tedious process for me, first designing on paper, then copying that into Sketch to design a digital version, and then copying that design into InVision to prototype interaction. But now it's become very easy because that entire process has transitioned over entirely to Figma. Now, another important outcome of technological advancements is that low-fidelity prototypes have lost their edge in speed and cost savings to the proliferation of digital design systems. As part of its functional breadth, digital prototyping tools such as Figma support the creation of design systems that facilitate easy replication of designs, meaning that high-fidelity prototypes can be more quickly and cheaply built than in the past. In industry, design problems can often be solved by applying tried-and-true design patterns, and so design systems act as a sort of proxy for low-fidelity prototypes, allowing designers to quickly build out high-fidelity prototypes without the need to explore and test with low-fidelity versions first. Now, there are two other factors that contribute to the diminishing allure of paper and low-fidelity prototyping among UX/UI designers, and they are professional maturity and educational and generational differences. They both fall under the designer's identity theme, and you can read more about them in our paper. So in terms of implications, our findings call for rich discussions on the relevance of paper and low-fidelity prototyping in contemporary design practices. They include discussions around looking for ways to incorporate practical industry prototyping methods into HCI education. So while it's important to teach low-fidelity prototyping to emphasize the importance of early-stage design explorations, it's also equally relevant from an industry perspective to help designers recognize, okay, when is it fine to use design systems and apply the tried and true design patterns to commonly seen design problems. This can help enhance HCI education and prepare students not only with foundational design principles, but also the practical skills that they need for transitioning into industry UX/UI design roles. Secondly, discussions around digital versus physical prototypes beyond the software domain. For example, investigating whether our findings apply in the domain of hardware products and in the AR/VR space, which present additional parameters to consider, such as tactile experience and sense of scale, which aren't nearly as relevant for designing on-screen user interfaces in the software space. And lastly, engaging in more nuanced discussions with respect to the low versus high fidelity debate. In our study, participants tended to oversimplify prototyping fidelity into a dichotomous relationship, when in reality there are multiple dimensions to fidelity, including visual, interactive, data, and platform dimensions. Now, before we close, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to everyone involved in making this work possible. This includes grants that we received from the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada and Adobe Research. All of the design practitioner participants who volunteered their time and expertise to help us with our interviews, members of the D-Lab and MUX Lab at the University of British Columbia for their engagement in discussions and feedback, and last but not least, my co-author, Dr. Dongwook Yoon, for his invaluable collaboration and guidance. And so our research delves into the factors influencing prototyping practices among designers in the contemporary software industry, namely that shifting industry norms, advancements in digital prototyping tools, and changing designer identities are the driving forces behind the diminishing allure of paper and low-fidelity prototyping among UX/UI designers. Thank you.